What if I told you that the classic advice, go to school, get good grades, find a safe, secure job, wasn't actually the path to wealth, but maybe a trap? Today, we're digging into the story of Robert Kiyosaki, a man who grew up with two dads. One was his own father, a brilliant academic who, despite his education, struggled with money his whole life. The other was his best friend's dad, an eighth-grade dropout who became one of the richest men in Hawaii. This is the story of how one simple shift in thinking can completely change your financial destiny.
And right there, that's the whole ballgame. It's not just a small difference in advice, it's two totally different worlds. Poor dad's advice teaches you how to be a fantastic employee. Rich dad's advice, it teaches you how to be the owner. And that one little distinction, well, that's where our entire story really begins.
So, how does a 9-year-old kid even start down a path like this? Well, it all kicked off with that classic childhood sting of being the one left out, and it led to him asking one simple but incredibly powerful question. Okay, so picture it. It's 1956. Young Robert is feeling pretty down. All his wealthy friends are heading off to their fancy beach house for the weekend, but he and his best friend Mike can't go. Why? Because they're the poor kids. Ouch. That really gets to him. So he marches home, looks his highly educated father, his poor dad, in the eye and asks him this blunt, life-changing question.
Now, what the boys did next is kinda hilarious. Their first shot at a business was, get this, counterfeiting nickels by melting down old lead toothpaste tubes. Super creative, right? But also, super illegal. When his dad found out, you'd think he'd be mad. But he wasn't. He actually praised them for taking initiative, for doing something, before, gently explaining the law. And then he did the most important thing any mentor can do. He admitted he didn't have the answer and sent them to someone who did, Mike's dad.
And this is where we meet the mentor, the man who would become Robert's rich dad. And let me tell you, his first lesson was absolutely not what these two 9-year-old boys were expecting.
No books, no lectures, no sitting in a stuffy classroom. Rich Dad's offer was brutally simple. You want to learn? You learn in the real world. He was already teaching them a lesson without them even realizing it. Life moves fast, opportunities pop up, and you have to be able to make a decision right then and there. So they took the deal.
So what was this amazing job? Dusting thousands of canned goods in one of his convenience stores. 3 hours, every single Saturday. And the pay? A measly 10 cents an hour. I mean, even for 1956, that was practically nothing. The boys were, to put it mildly, confused, and it didn't take long for that confusion to turn into real frustration.
A month goes by. Robert's given up his Saturday softball games, all for a grand total of 30 cents a week. He'd had it. He felt totally used, completely cheated, and like he hadn't learned a single thing about money. He was convinced Rich Dad was just some greedy old man exploiting child labor, and he was ready to quit.
And this moment, this angry confrontation that's about to happen, this is the turning point. This is where the real lesson finally kicks in, and it changes everything.
So Robert marches in, ready for a fight, accusing Rich Dad of being a liar and a cheat. And Rich Dad's response is just stunning. He tells him that the anger, that feeling of being underpaid, unappreciated, and trapped, that was the first part of the lesson. He needed Robert to feel exactly what it's like to be stuck depending on a paycheck.
He was showing them firsthand the trap that most of society falls into without ever realizing it. He called it the rat race. It's this endless cycle that isn't driven by smarts or logic, but by two of the most powerful emotions we have, fear and desire.
Think about it. Here's how the loop goes. The fear of not having money makes you get a job. Then you get that paycheck, and desire kicks in. You see all the cool things you can buy, so you spend it. But then the bills show up, and that old fear of being broke comes creeping right back. So what do? You work harder to get a bigger paycheck, and the cycle just starts all over again. But did the boys really get it? Had the lesson truly sunk in? Well, Rich Dad decided to put them to the test. He dangled the very fuel that powers the rat race right in front of their faces, the promise of more money.
First, he offers them $1 an hour. Now, for a 9-year-old boy, that's like winning the lottery. That's a 10-fold raise. You can just imagine their hearts pounding, their brains screaming, "Say yes, take it!" But they stayed quiet.
So then he cranks it up to an absolutely ridiculous $5 an hour. The offer is so completely over the top that it actually breaks the spell. The temptation just vanishes, and in that moment, they see it for exactly what it is, a test of their emotions.
By not chasing the bigger paycheck, they proved they were ready for the real secret.
And there it is. Lesson number 1. This is the fundamental mindset shift. The poor and the middle class spend their lives working for money. The rich, they have their money work for them. See, it's not about how big your salary is. It's about breaking that connection between your time and your income. It's about building systems that make money for you so you don't have to.
Now, it's one thing to hear a lesson like that, right? But it's a whole other thing to actually put it into practice. So to see if they truly got it, Rich Dad gave them one last, final challenge.
Yep, you heard that right. Zero. Zilch. Nothing. By taking the paycheck completely off the table, he forced their brains to stop thinking like employees chasing a wage and start looking for opportunities. He was literally training their minds to see the value that everyone else was too busy to notice.
And guess what? It totally worked. A few weeks later, the boys noticed the store manager literally throwing away old comic books. Their new mindset immediately saw an opportunity. They took these comics, these assets they got for free, opened up a little library in an empty room, and started charging the other kids in the neighborhood 10 cents to come in and read as much as they wanted. They had created a system that made them money even when they weren't there.
Their little comic book library was pulling in about $9.50 a week, which just blew their old 30-cent-a-week wage out of the water. But the amount of money wasn't the real prize here. The real prize was control. For the first time, they had created their own money, completely independent of a boss or a job.
They had actually done it. They'd escaped the trap. By shattering that employee mindset, they finally felt what it was like to have an asset, a system, that was working for them. The first lesson was officially complete.
But learning to have money work for you, well, that was just level 1. Rich Dad's next lesson was arguably even more important, and it all came down to one single critical question that would shape their entire financial lives. Do you know the difference between an asset and a liability? And that is a question for another day.